Hello everyone, Oregon Moto John. I'm excited to review this 2024 Honda CRF 300L. For those of you out there watching, don't worry, I haven't gotten rid of my KTM or my Husky bikes. I have a KTM 300, which is the best trail bike I've ever owned, which is saying a lot. And the FE350S, which is right on its heels as far as one of the better bikes I've ever owned that's street legal. I got this bike to have something I can lug around. I needed a bike that I could kind of lug around a little bit. That could do that while I was teaching my daughter how to drive her bike. A little Yamaha TTR 125, and then eventually this will be passed on to her. My Husky has a motocross engine in it, basically. It's been tuned for the street, and it doesn't like just to go at a steady state or slow. I mean, I can do it. I've actually done it a handful of times while I was teaching her, and she's getting close enough to where she'll need that next bike. So I thought, you know what, maybe this makes sense. So anyway, I'm liking this bike. I've had it on got about 50 miles on it now, so not a lot, but enough to know how it rides. And we're going to go out and talk about it. But I would say so far I'm impressed with how it comes. I mean, for around $5,500 this is quite the bike. I mean, what a lot of bike. This is the non-ABS model, but it is a lot of bike for the money. I mean, just a whole lot of bike. Comes with some IRC tires that are kind of good dual sport tires. They're just good. So these tires are, you know, IRC trail tires, and they're good. They're decent. I've had them on some hard packed trails, and in mud they might come up. Just they're pretty tightly packed, but for the street, gravel and hard packed dirt, they've been great. Headlight seems to work fairly well. The only thing I've added so far is this pad, so that doesn't come on there, and the skid plate. If you're going to do much off-roading, the skid plate's going to be essential. This is an Astrobus one. It's pretty cheap. It's like, I don't know, 60 bucks. But anyway, out of the box, I feel like you're getting a lot of bike with this. I like the digital display. It has a tach, fuel gauge, you know, a host of other things. I did have to put a spacer in here to get the front brake hydraulic line, otherwise it kind of ends up here, so I made a video on that. But it comes with these guards here, but they're pretty flimsy. I don't know that they would protect much, but at least it gets you out of the wind, so it's something. The mirrors, stain adjustment. I like the locking gas cap. It works well, and seat position is comfortable. Pretty low seat height. I think it was 34. I don't think it was 32. I believe it was 34. So low enough for most people. I'm 5'6.5" and 30-inch inseam, and I can touch with both feet, tippy toes or balls of my feet, and I feel comfortable on it. Brakes are okay. They seem to be getting better as they break in. They're kind of a, what are they, Nissan? And they work pretty well. I think the Rally model has a little bigger rotor, so probably a little better braking modulation there. Suspension feels good, soft, but for what most people would do with it, I think that's about right. It has a linkage system, which seems to work fine. I'll probably put a tidy tail on it just to get rid of all this stuff. I like the exhaust. It's quiet. And so far, I like it's torquey. It's a torquey motor, you know, of course, water cooled. I've heard these get 70 miles per gallon-ish, and this is like a little over 2-gallon gas tank, so that'll take you a while, if you know, to burn through that. Should get you about a 140-mile range or 120 miles on the short side of that. I'd probably, if I were going to go very far, I'd probably just put a little extra fuel in a backpack or something. Things I'm going to do to it: I'm going to get a little carrier for this, tidy tail. I'll make videos on that. Eventually get a gold chain on there, upgraded O-ring chain to match the gold forks. That always looks good with a Honda. But I'm not going to do a bunch of stuff to this, because I feel like it's a good value. So things I've noticed so far in riding it: softer suspension, which again for most riders are perfect, but if you're going to really start beating down some trails, I could see where you might need to fiddle with the suspension a little bit, or even upgrade the rear shock, or make some changes to the front. But for most intensive purposes, it feels quite good. But again, I'm comparing this to a bike almost twice its cost, the Husky 22 FE350S suspension, so it's not really it's not a fair comparison. But for the street, this feels a little more dual sport oriented than, say, like my KTM 300 or my Husky 350S. So on the street, it feels quite good. So this feels like it's a step closer towards a street bike and a step further away from a dirt bike, whereas my FE350S and my KTM 300 are definitely dirt bikes. So pros and cons with these bikes. There's always sacrifices. This feels a little better on the street, not as good on trails, but gravel roads and streets so far, I've really felt like this does quite well. But it wouldn't allow me to get rid of my other bikes. They're just too good. So let's go for a ride. I like the big buttons, big chunky headlight buttons, big horn button, nice big blinker button. Hazard light button's really big. You push that. On off switch big. Starter's really big. I don't know. I like all the big buttons. So I like how it's laid out. I like the reservoir for the coolant is big and easy to get at. Easy to see. You can see where it's at. Just a nice clean setup. Comes with a helmet lock. Toolbox. Heard there's not a lot of tools in there, but looks like there's plenty of room to add your own tools. And I like that it comes ready for a little tail mount, luggage rack there. I like that when the bike is on, it kind of has these running lights. I don't know, it feels like when I see a bike with those, my eyes are drawn to them a little quicker. Whether it helps with safety overall, I don't know, but I tend to pick up on a bike a little quicker when they have them. So I don't know, I feel like it's configured pretty good. Has a gear selector here, so that's kind of nice. I know it isn't always needed, but it's nice kind of to know what gear you're in. And it's big, easy to see. Tells you how much fuel you've used. So yeah, I like the way this is configured. The only thing, you guys who watch know I like to know my temperature of my engine. And this has this piece of plastic here, so I can't really put a radiator cap on with a temperature gauge on. I guess I could remove this piece of plastic or cut it out, but I really hate to do that, so probably won't. I could add a digital gauge, but I don't see a way to know what your temperature is for your motor. But anyway, all that being said, is I like how it's configured, and it starts up, fuel injected, push of a button is a cold start, and that's it. Side road here, and it's real torquey. I mean, I don't have to give it a lot of wind it out. You can rev it out, and it makes decent power when you rev it out, but you don't have to for it to make power. But it is pretty torquey down low. I mean, start at 2,500, 3,000 RPM. It's got good pull, so I like that you can kind of lug it, and it doesn't mind that. If you have it in too high of a gear, it'll start to do what it just did, where it kind of, you can just tell it's lugging a little, and you drop another gear, and it's happy. I've revved it out a little bit too, and it seems pretty happy to be revved out. So we'll get out on the main highway and rev it out a little bit. We'll see how it feels. Pull out here. Pretty nice tight gear ratios, but I don't mind that. It's no slouch. It's got adequate acceleration, and I like that the 6th gear is pretty high. I can slip it into kind of an overdrive 6th gear, and it feels pretty happy humming along at highway speeds, 55, 60. Gearbox feels good, clutch feels good. It's cable actuated throttle and clutch, which which I like. Drive-by-wire has a different feel many times, and so I pull out here, just rev it out a little bit, take it up to about 8,000 RPM or 7. It's got a little shift light there. Let's see if I can bring it on. There it is. Kind of reminds you to shift, a little white light in the middle of the screen. So here we are humming along at 55, and it's doing about 5,500 RPM. It doesn't feel like it's over revving. It feels comfortable. I could ride this down the highway for quite a while and be pretty satisfied with it. It does feel more like a street bike. I lean, it wants to lean, whereas my Husky feels the fork angles and the geometry of the frame. It feels like a dirt bike. This feels somewhere in between where you'd expect it. It's comfortable on the highway like this. So let's keep riding. We're going to find a little gravel up here. I don't know if I'll get on trails today or not, if I'll be able to drive that far, but this bike I think is probably more intended for a little pavement, some gravel roads. Here we're leaning in the corner. It just feels real comfortable coming out. Plenty of power. I'd really like to try the Honda 450L. This piques my curiosity after driving this. I know it'd be a different bike yet. But this is comfortable on the street, and those tires, those IRC tires, feel good. They're not knobbly. And this bike likes to tip in. The geometry of the frame, it feels good. Obviously no wind protection. The Rally has a screen. I'm sure there's plenty of aftermarket screens you could add, but I kind of like this the way it is. I'm not in any turbulence, and it's got laminar flow by my helmet. The scene is the lower gears, first, second, third, seem to be lower. Something you could use off-road on a trail. And then as you get to fifth and sixth, they seem to stretch out, give you more legs for on the highway. So I like that. Sixth gear does feel like a true overdrive gear, or more than. I'm not hunting for that next gear like on my my Husky. I can tell it's geared for off-road, which is the way I like it. But I find myself when I'm on the highway looking for it has 6 gears, but I'm looking for a 7th gear, because the 6th gear is pretty evenly spaced with the other one, so it's I wouldn't call it an overdrive 6th gear on the Husky. But this, 6th gear, if I leave it in 6th gear and I'm going 40 or less, it doesn't like it. And this feels real spirited through the corners here. I mean, it tips in, and yeah, it feels good. I'm liking this. And my first bike as a kid was a Honda 80. I drove that thing quite a bit, and so I got a soft spot for Honda. Stuff lasts forever. Okay, so here we're hitting some gravel and a little washboard, so let's see how we do. This is pretty loose. And those IRC tires, I mean, for this kind of use, I feel like they're a good tire to come on the bike. A little washboard there. I'm standing up so I don't beat my backside, so definitely that soft suspension. It's not a KTM or Husky suspension, WP suspension. I'm feeling the washboard, where when I take this ride on my Husky, I don't notice it as much. It soaks it up a little better, but this is adequate. If I'd never ridden anything else, I'd be pleased as punch right now. And again, it's not jarring. It's just you just know the washboard's there. Whoop. Hit the horn instead of turning my blinker off, so that's something to have to get used to. But plenty of motor here. I was worried that a 300 wouldn't have enough motor for me, but no, it's fun. I mean, so here, if I rev this out, 6,000 RPM around, you start making good power. I'm going up a hill and I'm on gravel. I'm able to accelerate and do what I want to do. I were in sand, I'd have to get pretty aggressive with the throttle to make this work. But man, this you know, I couldn't imagine buying this bike for the sand. That doesn't make any sense. You'd want more of a motocross bike, so that's not even really a fair thing to bring up. But and this is a pretty steep upgrade up gravel. Washboard, if I stand up, that's deep washboard. It does fine. Feather the clutch a little bit. Having a little bit of a hard time getting traction over that washboard because it's just bouncing around. But this is a terrible road. You know, people go uphill on gravel and they start that bouncing thing and getting traction and losing it, and it makes some terrible washboard. So if I can navigate this and stand up a little, bounce through it, and feel pretty good, that's not bad. About what I'd expect. There might be some settings too that I can play with. On this bike, I haven't adjusted anything, to be fair. I've just hopped on it and I'm riding it. But it wouldn't hurt to look at the manual, see what adjustability is possible with these shocks. But this motor's torquey. I know I've said that before, but it's just a lot of fun to drive. For somebody wanting to get into a dual sport, you know, bike, this would be on the list. I think it would have to be for a beginner, or somebody that has some experience but just wants a nice bike that's reliable and the price point is good. I mean, for $5,500, this is a lot of bike. That's all I can say. Honda reliability, helmet lock, little toolbox, place to put the tools. Like, good tried and true motor. Like I said, this is a water-cooled motor. Oh, something I need to bring up. This has longer oil change intervals. That was another thing that when I was riding with my daughter, I was taking my Husky out, and I like to change oil on that every 5 to 10 hours because it's more of a motocross engine. And it didn't make sense for just puttering around at 10 miles per hour kind of a thing, 10 to 15, 20. Whereas this, I mean, I think the intervals are pretty long, like once a year kind of oil change thing, unless you were, I think it's like 5,000 miles or something ridiculous like that, 4,000 to 5,000 miles intervals. Now, whether I probably won't let it go that long, but anyway, the point is this is a very low-strung, more of a street bike motor, I would say, that's water-cooled as compared to a water-cooled, high-strung, high-horsepower, high-revving motocross motor, where, you know, changing oil, you almost have to do it every other ride. Every ride if it's a long ride, but it becomes it becomes a thing that you need to do. But this, hey, you can just go out and ride it, put fuel in it, keep your air filter clean, and it'll run a long time. You know, follow the intervals that Honda recommends on the oil changes, and like any Honda, I'm sure it'll run a long time. Honda makes some of the best small motors in the world, and we've all, I'm sure, experienced that with generators, cars. I've certainly experienced it with dirt bikes that I've owned, quads. I mean, if you even reasonably take care of a Honda reasonably well, it's going to run a long time. Yeah, this is really loose, and the bike geometry, it feels good. I'm surprised how comfortable I am on this gravel road. I haven't had anything step out on me or in a way that's unpredictable. I'm very comfortable. The suspension feels good on this gravel road. It's pretty average, occasional pothole. So here's a little section. Sometimes on my Husky, I'm going to rip through pretty quick. So let's see. Yeah, the washboard there. Now this is feeling good. Adequate power. I mean, I weigh around 190, 95 pounds. and this bike has plenty of power to lug me around, so that says something. A lot of washboard here. My Husky handles the washboard better, but it should. It's made for that. Stay on the inside of these corners just in case I meet someone. What a day to ride. What a great day. It's a morning. Man, it's good. The brakes on this, they felt really really numb at first when the bike was new, but I waited 50 miles to do this review because I wanted to see what they did if they broke in, and they're much better now. I mean, the front brake actually and the rear, they're getting some bite. Again, not like a Brembo brake on a KTM dirt bike, but I'm not displeased with these for its purpose. I can two-finger the front brake and it's okay. Yeah, this bike feels good. And I know I've said it like multiple times, but I can't even, I don't know how I can get this much bike for $5,500. I mean, that just actually blows me away. And you know, anymore you could get a suspension person to probably do some work on this shock, or you know, there's lots of aftermarket shocks that will just bolt on and are pretty good out of the box. So the suspension doesn't bother me, and honestly, I'd rather have a suspension be too soft than too hard. So yeah, this thing gets it. I mean, you get up in the RPM and it's no slouch. I was a little worried because I think my Husky, the way I have it tuned, is around 40 some horsepower, and this is I think around 20. Don't quote me. You guys can chime in. I think 25, 27, some high 20s. Maybe it's a little more, but somewhere in there. And so I thought, man, this thing's gonna feel a little doggy, but you know, it doesn't. So I'd really like to try the 450 out, the Honda 450, just for curiosity. I know it'd be a good bike. Yeah, this is feeling good on gravel road. I'm enjoying it way more than I thought I would. And you can lug this thing around too. I mean, I'm kind of using the RPMs, but look, I can get down in 3,000 RPM, and it'll tractor. It'll lug out of the corners, and so you can drive this in a non-spirited way, and it feels good. The suspension probably even likes that a little better anyway. Brakes, tires, clutch feels good. It actually has a nice light feel, easy to pull in. It has good low end, good mid range. It will rev out if you want it to. I don't notice a bunch of heat coming from the engine. Yesterday it was 100 degrees, and I did notice some heat, but I was puttering around at 10 miles per hour, working with my daughter on some riding skills. So any bike would get hot in those kinds of conditions, and the fan would kick on and it would kick off, and so it was keeping itself cool. You could just tell when the fan would kick on. You'd feel that heat when you weren't really moving very fast. But today it's morning, so it's cooler, but I don't notice it at all because I'm moving. Oh, that's a good point. It comes with a radiator fan. So I like Honda's thinking about longevity there. So although this doesn't have a temperature gauge per se, it does have a internally way that it's controlling that with its fan from the factory. And it's just a real pleasant bike. Very stable. I probably need to raise these handlebars a little bit. I might put some spacers under the bars, but that's kind of a personal preference thing. I have short arms, so Peg height feels good. This has more of the seat is kind of dropped down, kind of like a banana, so to get you closer to the ground, which most riders will appreciate. So it's not a motocross style seat like some dual sports. Yeah, the bike feels good. Yeah, decent power. I'm really happy with it. I could ride this bike a long time and I'd be very pleased with it. As a first bike, wow, I don't know how you can even go wrong. So here it is, just lugging along here, idling. Here it is, just idling, and it's just such a nice bike for the money. I keep saying that, but this would make a good, in my opinion, first or second bike. Kind of that medium step for a little light commuting and occasional off-road. Just a good looking bike. Kind of takes cues from their 450 motocross bike. Huh, yeah, really just a gem of a bike, in my opinion. The exhaust is good. I did a brake and oil change on it too, which I'll do a video on that. So easy to change oil on a plug, a filter, oil back in, done. Only thing I can see is needing a tidy tail. Yeah, see the fans running, keeping itself cool. And it's a good looking motor. It's half a radiator. This is your radiator here. On the other side, there isn't a radiator. It has one radiator on this right side. That's so interesting. I must have figured that's all it needs. Usually there's a radiator on both sides, but on this other side, it's actually the coolant tank and the horn, and there's nothing behind there. So I don't know, just interesting. Not a pro or a con, it's just interesting. But I always have felt very at home on just getting on a Honda and riding a bike. I don't know what it is. They just seem to have the geometry figured out, or maybe they're making it for a smaller person. I don't know. Like some of my other bikes, I get on and they feel a little big, but once I ride them a while, I'm good. But I don't know. Hondas always just feel very comfortable to me. So here I am, just rolling through the gears. I'll show you without revving it out, just to show how torquey it is. So I'm gonna do short shifting. I don't know, 4,000 RPM or less, and it just lots of torque. You don't have to wring this thing's neck to move it along. My guess is that's one of the reasons it can get such good fuel economies. It's just not working that hard. And so yeah, you can just leisurely drive this bike, but here I'll rev it out a little. Yeah, those brakes are feeling better. If you want to get on it, rev it out, it'll go. What the heck? A weird looking bird. Tell you what though, if it's standing around with me coming at it, it's not going to last long out here. There's lots of predators, cougars, coyotes, other things. I have seen a cougar up here once. It was pretty awesome, but I don't need to see one again. I'd be fine with that. He was more scared of me than I was of him. Well, I don't know about that. I think I was more scared of him than he was of me, but he did run off into the forest, which was fine with me. yeah, this you can just cruise along, and the suspension feels good on everything but washboard. I'll take this on a little bit of single track, so to give a report on what that feels like. So probably the next time I'll tune in, we'll be on single track. But this feels very comfortable on gravel, and these tires, I'm not going to change these tires out for the purposes I'm using it for, because they feel good for what I'm doing. If I were to be in deep mud, I think that tread pattern would be a problem. Okay, this is open, so yeah, I'll be able to show you guys some single track action today. Or excuse me, gravel like this, the gravel roads, I could do this all day long on this bike. Feels good. Very composed. If something gets too rough, I just stand up like you would on any bike, and it feels good. Very nice to ride this bike. Corner's good. These tires got adequate grip. The engine can be lugged or just kind of ride in a normal way. A little looseness there, and the bike sliding around, but it's doing so in a composed way, if that makes sense, predictable way. This does feel like a true dual sport, though. It doesn't feel like a dirt bike. Like you said, there's pros and cons to that. Just the way when you tip in, how it handles, it doesn't have the upright feel that the dirt bike can have, which I actually like that, but when you're on pavement, this feels very composed. See, there I could have shifted down, but I was able to just lug out of that corner in third. We're going uphill, and I'm not at a want for more power. Over this bike, or true dirt bike, is this is some pretty large, it's hard to tell, rock here. It's not smooth anymore, very smooth, and I've had to slow down. It was just it was getting a bit rough, and so I just slowed down, stood up, and it was okay. So it does, I feel like the suspension does well in anything but maybe the roughest terrain. Now it's smoothing out a little bit, but there was a moment where I was like, okay, this is beating me up a little too much. The softness of the forks I was blasting through the stroke a little quick, and but not a big deal. I just slowed down a little and stood up, and I was okay. So just worth noting. If you're buying a bike for $5,500, you can put some money into it. You could do some suspension work and actually feel pretty good about it. And again, I only noticed that one spot where I was kind of getting a little unsettled. So, okay, this is some pretty hard. This stuff makes me struggle on my 300. So let's see how we do here. Come on, Honda. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. Yep, we're doing it. It's doing it. And that is some gnarly uphill, and it didn't stall. I started off in second, and then I went to first, and there's some this is doing it. This is getting it done, and the suspension feels better than I thought it would. Yeah, I'm actually impressed. I didn't know how that was gonna do. Yeah, second gear, it can lug along, but it probably needs first. Yeah, let's see how we do. Yeah, it likes first. I haven't bottomed out, haven't lost, had a lack of ground clearance through there.
Yeah, no, it did good. The soft suspension at slower speeds through trails feels awesome. Kind of bottomed out a little bit on some of the bigger root balls with speed, but not in a harsh way. I could run this around with my buddies and to be able to drive, have something street legal where you could drive up here. Yeah, this is cool. It's rolling through these rollers good. Yeah, no, this some rocks and roots, and yeah, second gear can kind of lug along. Very good. Then here I am out at the pavement. Huh. No, that was fun. I would ride this on single track. After a full day, it could be a little fatiguing, but you know what? I would do it, and I would enjoy it. And here, that's the thing about a dual sport. I just went up a bunch of roots and trails and rocks and dirt, and the tires felt great through that. It's not real wet today, but they hooked up good. I was able to tractor through anything I needed to. Yeah, no, that was fun. So yeah, it did well on that single track stuff. If you get a lot of baby heads or boulders, little rocks, it doesn't like that, but most bikes don't unless you've done a lot of suspension work on them, or at least it comes with a pretty expensive suspension. I'm gonna try one other trail down here. I've ridden this one a lot. I'm on my 300 and my 350. No, it feels good. Yeah, second gear. It's kind of a nice gear to pick for a lot of this. It's responsive enough to get the business done. I'm standing up. I'm able to find a nice balance point on the bike. Brakes feel good. It's no 300, but you know what? Or 350, but it feels good. Yeah. Feel the back end kick once in a while if I hit a big root ball or something, but not anything that's going to upset the bike. And I'm punishing it through here. These are root drops. Yeah, it's rideable. Except that's not the line I wanted to take. So that's where the suspension, once in a while, I get a little knock and it knocks me off where I'm trying to go. But not bad. Here's a few more root. Yeah, nope, staying composed through those. It's just really if you get too much speed going that it doesn't appreciate it. Nope, it's feeling good. Ooh. Branch tried to grab me. Trails are in actually really nice condition right now as far as tacky. Yeah, no, I'm enjoying this. You know, and this is moderately technical, and some of it's a little more technical. Yeah, bike feels good through here. I'm flowing. Yeah. No, that was good. I'm liking that. Yeah, feels good. Okay, so there's what the bike's all in all. I've done it all today. I did pavement, did gravel road like this. We did some single track, fairly technical stuff with roots and rocks, and this bike did it all. I mean, it's a good do-it-all bike, but I could tell if I were going to keep this long term and do mainly trails with it. I mean, I am keeping it long term. I'll just be a different rider on it. I'd probably do some maybe a different rear shock, or it may just need to be adjusted, to be fair. Even my 300 out of the box, before I set the preload, it really wasn't being very kind to me. So it may just be a matter of adjustment. You guys can chime in. What a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest here. Wow. So yeah, I'm gonna just kind of journey on home. Kind of went up here this morning, hit Elk Flats. Now I'm gonna just ride on home. And you know, this is loose gravel. It's feeling good. And I just rode everything I'd normally ride on my 350. I may have felt the punishment a little bit more because of the suspension, but if I hadn't ridden anything else, I wouldn't even know. I'd be totally happy with it. And I could see there was a lot of adjustment for preload on the shock. I probably should set the sag and all that, to be fair. But I took a pretty technical trail with this, and it did great. So yeah, there's kind of my ride and review of the 2024 CRF 300 Hell. Honda did a really nice job with it, and I don't know how they put a bike like this together for that price point, but they did. And you know, the soft suspension kind of feels good through some of these rollers. It just kind of flows through there. It's just if you hit like a root ball, then sometimes it just has a hard time figuring out how to deal with that. But you know, that's not a common thing when you're riding. It's just here and there. And when you stand up, it flowed right through that anyway, which is what you'd be doing. When you're riding, you'll be standing up through that stuff anyway. So there you have it. I'll do some other, you know, some of the upgrades I'll do to this bike. I'll be sure and post. You like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Always happy to grow the motorcycle community. We kind of learn from each other, and the main thing, it doesn't matter what bike you're on, get out there and ride. I just do this stuff because it's fun, and if I can help somebody learn something without making a wrong purchase, I think that's always a good thing. There's nothing worse than getting a bike and it doesn't meet your needs and it's just not the right bike for you. There's so many bikes and they all do different things slightly well. There's always compromises. This bike is a good, in my opinion, middle of the road bike. It does a lot well. Oh, there's those tires, they don't like that mud. But we can tell that by the tread pattern. There's just a short segment of mud and they were fine, but if that kept going, they were gonna get slick. But a short patch is good. It's amazing to me, it's been so hot up here, and if you find the right area, there's little sections of water. Up in the woods like this, whenever I see water, I'm like, huh, that's probably a good place for animals to come get some water. Okay, that should be the last water crossing there. But yeah, you want to get the right bike. In this bike, I mean, it would work for me with some suspension upgrades. Or just adjustment. I'd have to fiddle with it a little. So, I mean, it could be the beginning intermediate rider. Wants a little street, a little dirt. It could also be with suspension work. An advanced rider could enjoy this bike. I mean, I'm enjoying it, but oh man, this is loose stuff here. This is where the suspension doesn't like it. I mean, and it's big rock. There we go. See, so we get to smooth and it's fine. You just have to stand up, find your neutral zone in that triangle there, and let it roll through that stuff. And it's always fun to get out and ride. So there I just felt the back shock kind of bouncing, pogo sticking up and down a little bit. And I'm sure I need to adjust some things, but because this bike is going to be being used for my daughter too, I'm not going to set it up for my weight and all that. I want to, then it'd be oversprung for her. So I'm just going to ride it, enjoy it, maybe make some things I could adjust back when she rides it, like preload or something. But as it is, out of the box, I'm happy with it. I'm not dissatisfied at all. And I like the colors. I like the red, white, and blue. I've always been a sucker for Honda Red. It just looks good. And this has kind of the red, white, and blue graphics and everything. They do make a L with a low seat. I think it's a couple inches lower, but the bike is gray. Come on, Honda. Honda buyers don't want a gray bike. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we want Honda Red. So, but yeah, you guys look at the low version seat height. They made I think it's LS, maybe it's low seat. But anyway, they have the 300L, which is what I'm on, and then they made one with a low seat. But the low seat one, I mean, go take a look, see what you think. It looks like, I don't know, those designers were depressed that day. But I get it, they're probably trying to make it different so it's distinguished from this model, but I'd have a hard time buying that bike on looks alone. But maybe you guys like it. See what you think. I do like the exhaust on this. It's nice and quiet. On a dual sport, it is nice to just be able to sneak through areas without making too much noise. So I like this exhaust on this. I don't think I'll ever change it out. Probably can pick up a little horsepower with the slip-on, but I don't know. For the purposes of this, I think I like quiet. And it's, you can hear it rev. It's not so quiet that you can't hear it, but yeah, this bike is definitely fun. I recommend. And these brakes are definitely getting better the more I ride it. And with forks, going back to suspension, rear shocks can be changed out for not a lot of expense. Front forks can get cartridges. A suspension guy can do wonders with suspension for not a whole lot of expense. There's lots. I'm sure there's lots of options. But I'm not going to touch anything on the suspension because for somebody 50 pounds lighter or more, this could be sprung just right. So, I just swallowed a bug. That was nice. That happens. Yeah. So composed on gravel. I could really ride this thing a long ways. I mean, for most of us who want a bike that can go off-road, this is what we like to do. We like to just do a little pavement, do a little gravel, do some two-track, maybe occasionally, hit some trails, and this bike will do that. Would you want to do trails all day long on this bike? Well, it may not make sense. I mean, you could set it up for that. I just did some harder trails that I ride on my dirt bikes, and it did it. It was a little suspension work. It would actually be really good, but then you'd have to think about maybe buying maybe the 450 comes with better suspension. For another $5,000, I know you're getting something. Probably getting a lot of things. But all in all, positive review. I recommend this bike. for the money, it's really, really hard to beat it. I mean, you got the Yamaha XT250. That's a great bike. Air-cooled, I believe, so a little lower tech, but low tech isn't always bad. Less to break. So you have that bike in there. They have their big wheel fatty tire version of that bike. I can't think of what that is. That bike's a little cheaper. So there's other bikes to look at. But I think this is a hard to beat, really. Which is why I bought it. I wanted something durable. Didn't want to rebuy. The lower seat model, that's something to look at too. If you don't mind the looks of it. Kind of has gray, orange, black color scheme, which is okay. But for me, Honda, I don't know. It's got to be red. Yeah, Honda red is just awesome. Look at this view. Going downhill over the washboard seems fine. Pleasant bike. Does a lot of things well. I would say everything but probably the most extreme circumstances well. Or as you move towards the more extreme side of the spectrum, which from a dual sport bike is what you'd expect. You'd expect it to be kind of a compromise of okay on the street, good on gravel, okay on extreme off-road. And that's just what this bike does. Anything today that I felt was out of character or surprising. It did everything in a way that I felt it should. And the power was a little better than I thought it would be on paper. Little washboard standing up again. This is bad washboard. This time of year, people bomb through here and get it all torn up, so. Yeah, loose gravel. Feels good. I can tell though with that rear suspension, the way it's doing over that washboard, if I were gonna run this all the time, like with my main bike, for my weight and everything, I'd probably be adjusting this. Going home, getting the manual out, seeing what I could do to, looking at the sag and getting that set, and then rewriting, retesting, and then going from there. And then if I couldn't adjust it out with the OEM shock, then I'd probably start looking aftermarket a little bit, or find a shock guy that could tweak on this one a little bit. But that's only on washboard that I really noticed it. Really bad washboard at that, not just moderate or minimal, just really bad washboard on an uphill climb kind of a situation where you're on throttle, kind of compressing things, and then you start hitting the washboard and it's harder to get traction. But just a pleasant bike to drive. Big enough to get the job done, but not too big where you feel like you're on something large. I think this is speaking of that, how much is it? I think this is around a 300-pound bike. So not the lightest bike, like my Huskies around 200. I don't know, 40-ish, give or take a little. So this is a heavier bike on the heavier side of the spectrum. And you don't notice it until like I came to a stop a few times yesterday, was trying to turn around on a trail. And it's like, wow, this thing's feels a little heavier than some of my other bikes, but that's again one of those compromises. If you're on the street, that weight probably feels good. Kind of holds you to the road a little bit. And when I'm going down this gravel road, the weight doesn't hurt any, it feels good. And if you were going to be going more off-road and mud and stuff, you could throw some golden tires on here. They're DOT approved, and that would solve a lot of your traction issues. The only thing is the rear golden tire is a little higher profile, and that can make it harder to get to the ground if that's a concern. But a great morning down on the ride. Anyway, that concludes my ride, my review of the CRF 300L. Hope it helps. And get out there and ride, be safe, and enjoy riding each day that you can anyway. I noticed my fuel, I'm a little over half a tank, which is fine because I'm almost home. And that's pretty good. I've gone, I don't know, 70 some miles or so. But if I were going to ride with some buddies or something, I think I would put either fuel on a rear carrier, like a gallon, or throw something in a backpack. I don't like having to watch my fuel to where I'm worried about it. Yeah, you can always borrow fuel from friends, but I don't want to be that guy. So anyway, but the CRF 300L Rally has kind of I think 3-point-some gallons, so it kind of gives you an extra fuel capacity. So for a little bit more money, you could go that direction, and that would solve your fueling problems. I know that Camelback or Camel Adventure Products has like a fuel tank. I saw that you could mount back here an auxiliary fuel tank, so there's lots of options for that. So I would, if you want to get the regular 300, there's options for you, carrying fuel or an auxiliary fuel tank, or you could get the Rally model and you have, I think, plenty of fuel. Sometimes 1 extra gallon, when you're getting pretty good fuel economy, it's all you need. I feel like most of my rides, I need 2 gallons with the economy this gets. 70-ish miles per gallon would probably be about right, but I just don't like the idea of even potentially running out of fuel or getting close. So if I'm unsure, I usually just carry fuel. All right, well, there you have it. That's my final thoughts, and I'm cruising home on pavement very comfortably. The motor, I don't even think about it, it's not over revving, it feels comfortable at highway speeds. 6th gear does feel like a true overdrive to me. We can get up to 55, 60 miles per hour, and everything, life is good. Speaking of that, I hope your life is good. Wish you all the best. Thanks for watching. Mention that didn't feel very good over boulders and roots feels awesome on the highway for what it's worth. It rolls over little imperfections and things and feels good. So I would say for what you're going to use this bike for most of the time, the suspension feels quite good. So that's something to consider. Gravel, single track, and the street. I like how this rides on the street. It's just a very, very nice ride. The gearbox, like I talked about, how some of the higher gears start to stretch out a little bit more. It works well on the street. I don't feel like I run through the gears too quickly. The bike tips in easy. I'm sure it has to do with the frame and the steering angle and a few things that I don't know how to put into words, but I can just tell that it's set up to be comfortable to ride on street conditions too. So like here's a roundabout, and it's just I barely lean in and I can feel the steering headset start to turn and give me that lean. It's just very nice. So, here's 3rd gear coming out. Quite a bit of stretch to it. 4th gear, quite a bit of stretch. 5th, again, quite a bit of legs to it. Kind of a longer running gear. And then 6th, slip it in, and a nice kind of overdrive. And the gearbox feels good. it's just nice. I haven't had any false neutrals or missed gears today. Not any of the days that I've driven this. So the gearbox feels very nice. Honda's what you'd expect. But yeah, it's actually very nice to drive on the street. I'm surprised. Usually these bikes can feel a little buzzy to ride on the street, but this one is comfortable. Now, would you want to take this down a freeway at 75, 80 miles an hour? Well, you could, but I wouldn't buy this bike for that purpose. So there you have it. That's all my thoughts on this awesome bike.